Hello, Dale.
Welcome, Howard. Welcome back.
I've seen a lot of you lately, so we just did Motor X.
We have.
How good was that?
That was awesome. So good.
One of the really good things about Motor X is I had the opportunity to catch up with Lovell Springs when we were down there, or Lovell Suspension, and they've come on board to help us to keep this show on the road because obviously it costs money.
And time.
And effort. And they've come on board now to make sure not only we finish my bio, but we're now guaranteed that we can go through and do the build for all the cars. So we're going to start back at Rock Solid and go right through, but also all the cars I've built for customers will be done as well. So hanging out to do that, but first of all we've got to get through the bio, don't we?
Gems, yes. Yes, we do.
Yeah, so on top of that sponsorship thing, we need people to subscribe.
Yeah,
because we need that to happen so that I can continue to promote and make this channel grow, because if I don't make it grow, we can't keep performing and putting stuff out.
Yep.
And I'm right into it, just need to make it happen.
Yes.
So do us a favour, subscribe.
Yep, hit the like button as well.
Yep. And we're going to jump straight in now. Was there anything else we had to do? Oh,
we have to talk about your magnificent shirt you're wearing.
The new shirts. So people were asking about the shirts. What I've been able to do now is get these done in a direct garment print, and they're AS colour, the nice shirts.
Yep.
And
comfy.
These ones will be in white because of the colour, and then we've got the original Rock Solid, Rock 3, Race Rock, and they'll all be on astilldesign.com.
Yep.
So let's get on with it. Got a huge amount to cover as usual, and we've got to keep it around that hour. So first photo up is a really good shot of me and Louis. So I really wanted to put that in because I talk all the time about Luigi. So Louis was involved all the way through, and I just went Luigi and Lou. He calls himself Luigi now.
Oh.
Yeah, so
he's very formal.
Yeah, so when I've catch up with him, it's Luigi. So Louis, it was always Louis, now it's Luigi, but so that's his proper name. It's like me, I'm Kevin, not Howard. It's all confusing. Don't call him Kevin, that. So I just threw that in, and that was a bit of a reminder. I've got to find my button again. Here it is. So Louis Tirana turned up last time. That was at Wagga in '88.
Yep.
And Louis approached me. You know, he'd done so much work on my cars. He said, I'd really like to give the Tirana a bit of a birthday, give it a coat of paint.
Spruce it up.
And he hit me up before one of the summer nats, in September or something, and I said, well, when do you want to do it? He said, I'll be good for the nats. I said, well, if you wait, we'll do it after the nats and do a decent job. So we ran it in the shed, and he pulled all the bling off it and got it ready, and that's parked outside the new shed over at Doe Street. And we put that in, and I don't have any build photos because obviously it wasn't my car, so I didn't do it. But
because it was a Holden.
It was a Holden as well. We'll talk about that as well. But that's it featured. So it ended up in a magazine, and what Louis was after was an A9X look without all plastics.
Without the fluff.
And then he wasn't sure about wheels, and then the Wilkinshaw came out around that time. So he went to the dealer and bought brand new wheels from the dealer. So that sort of created a few problems because he didn't realise a different bolt pattern, and I said to him, I think Commodore's different, mate. So we worked our way through that, but we ended up with a 9-inch in it. So it was off the shelf, I think Johnny Taverna or someone, I think organised it with. And then we messed around with the front end trying to use HQ stubs and all. And when I read the article, just doing a bit of homework, we ended up with some Hadfield. Hadfield made some stubs up so we could get the geometry in it all right. And just using the springs he had in it, give him an extra 2 inches down to get clearance and all that sort of stuff with ball joints. So it was a full bare metal, stripped it down at my joint, and then that particular car I used 2K high build, but then put acrylic over it because I was still a bit dodgy about the 2K back then. So this is like 1990 or something, 91. And it was a 253, already had yellow terra heads, manifold, carby, extractors, all that sort of stuff.
Nice.
So Louis and I actually built the engine. We pulled that down and give it rings and bearings, and then the trim in it, we put new door trims, new carpets, tidied all the loose ends up, and he already had Recaros in it. So super nice car. I'll never forget, it was parked, we took it to Summer Nat 6 when we had the red EB Falcon with the Rock Solid down the side. And it ended up with a paint award, but more importantly, it was parked outside Building B, And I see a few of the boys hanging around checking it out. And Ronnie Barclay and a couple of his mates were looking at it. They went over and said, "What are you guys looking at?" They go, "Oh, how nice is this?" I said, "Yeah, it's pretty cool, eh?" And they go, "Who owns it?" I said, "My mate Louis." And they go, "Oh, that makes sense." Because it just had a nice clean feel and the sort of thing that we try and do when we build cars. So they're the magazine photos. We de-wired it, cleaned up the bay, had a bit of rust and stuff in it, but super nice car, and he had it for a long time.
Yep.
And he doesn't anymore, but I always said to him, if you ever sell that car, I want first option. And he rang me, and I had too much going on, and I just went, "No, look, I'd love it," because it was a really nice car, and I would have loved to have owned it, but moved on. So talking about moving on, pictures there now of the coupe. So as per the last episode, I'd already bought that, and pretty clean local car, Broken Hill car, no rust.
Yep.
And I pretty much stripped it out and sold off all the bits and pieces. But at this point in time, it was still all together because I was trying to do the deal with Pioneer.
Yes.
So when we were at Summonat 6, I was talking to the then marketing manager, and we had a handshake deal at the event that they would sponsor a build. Problem was he left, and the new guy come in.
Yep.
The new guy come in and he had to learn the ropes and stuff, so we lost 12 months. So we pretty much had a year off from the shed because we didn't, I didn't have any money, didn't have a sponsor.
No.
It wasn't going to happen. So the car sat, but you've still got to drive something.
That's right.
So you can see there the HV number plate was one of the cars from work, and I already had the shop going. So Tickford kit, set of wheels, springs, and I think I had a Momo steering wheel on it.
Not a bad daily.
Not a bad daily. So that was a nice weapon back in the day. So that was a brand new EB, 6-cylinder. I think they were all 6-cylinders.
I think they were for a while.
They come out.
It just
they did.
launched,
they just come out. That's right. So that was a daily. So, but of course we had a house to build. So I made the decision to own a build, and to do that through a licence. That my new neighbour, you can see the shed next door there.
Yep.
He was a builder, and he offered to put it through on his licence, but I basically project manage it. So at that point, my brother was running Lindsay's. It was his business, so they did the floors and the frames and the roof, and then I got the bricky in and the plaster in and all the bits and pieces. So you can see the progress shots there. And then while all that's going on, I was doing all the footings for the fences, getting the yard organised, and I'd sort of, because I had Rodney at the shop now, he was helping Louis, young Rodney. You can see him and I there down on the back. That was the back fence, so that was a bit of a challenge through the rocks and stuff. So pretty much working the yard, getting all the things organised.
Oh, look, there's the old man's car in the photo again.
Another one of Dad's photos. And I built this house with the plan that it would look very traditional. So it had all timber fascias. We even did the lead, where the veranda joined the building, and all the lead buddy, where those V's are.
Yep.
Yeah, that had all lead flashings.
Yes.
And all that sort of stuff. Looked really cool. And a lot of people, there was a tourist place across the road. People used to wander over and go, "What sort of brick's that? Is that a local brick?" And I go, "Yeah, it's Besser." But really nice house.
Yep.
And it was one of those things ongoing. And then Broken Hill, you need a pool. So
a bit far to the beach.
I was looking at, what sizes you get and all that sort of thing, and I was hunting through the net, and I found a guy that, we can make any size. And I said, "Well, you've got restrictions with the road and all." And I'd never heard of it being
Astill
done.
Thing.
And you see Dad on the right there, just making sure we're not getting into trouble. They made the pool on site. So you can see the left hand, they brought a trailer up with all the flat sheets with the piping on the back, and they made the thing on site. And I made a mistake. He said, I said, "How much for an extra foot?" And he told me, so put 10 more foot on it. But
you're trying to get the Olympics for Broken Hill, were you?
There was about a quarter Olympic. So the problem was the extra pool was cheap, but then you had to have bigger pump, bigger solar.
Yes.
Yeah, another story.
Yep.
So then it progressed, and you can see the same applied with the palm trees. Someone said a guy was bringing palms up from Mildura, so I got a dozen of those.
I'll take some of them.
Yeah, they were a bit bigger than I had in my head. But so it progressed, and then you can see me on the tiling there. Got Louise helping out.
Yep.
And then we bought, the kitchen was done in Adelaide and brought it up and installed. And then I had a guy do the gyp rock The previous house, I'd done the gyprock myself, but I was running out of time all the time, mate. So come up super sweet, and that's sort of the finished version of it. So that's over about, well, look at that photo there, probably 5 years with the gardens and all that sort of stuff.
Well established, yep.
Yeah, so I had a pretty substantial watering system on it. And I always thought if I didn't live there, I'd live in Queensland or somewhere green. That's why I ended up here. So I didn't mind paying for a bit of water to make it look nice.
And you want to have a nice lawn. It's a bit
Got to have a nice lawn, mate.
Bit of a Howard thing.
Yeah. You can see the bottom photo there. We used to have a bit of trouble with the water because in the summer it'd get a bit salty.
Yep.
We used to knock them around a bit. But yeah, beautiful home. So the house is done. We've got that all built. And then the next photo we got here is my mum with a couple of her girlfriends. And when we talk about the competitive spirit, I always talk about Dad. Well, Mum was a bit the same.
Yeah, you had no chance, did you?
That's right. So that's my mum there with the sash on. So she used to go out to the races, St Pat's races, the horse races.
Get all frocked up.
All frocked up, and they'd have
a fashion parade.
A fashion parade. I needed a bit of help.
Yep.
So yeah, so and Mum was always into it. So that year she won, and you can see the champagne bucket there, mate, was the one that was on the last episode.
Is it Most Elegant Lady, was it?
Most Elegant Lady. Yeah, so she was always into that.
Yep.
So now the next one's special for you, mate.
Yeah, now what's going on here, Howard?
Well,
a Holden in the driveway.
We were moving on from the XY.
Yep.
And Heather said, you know, I want a bit later model car, something dark blue, leather trim, you know,
V8.
Blah, blah, blah. So I'm on the, you know, unique cars back then probably, flicking the pages.
Yep.
And of course you couldn't find much in a Ford because they didn't have a V8 for 10 years and I wanted something 3, 4, 5 years old. And this thing come up. So it was a Calais, you know, 5 litre, you know, I-85. It had been chipped, wheels, and it had a much bigger rear wing on it when I got it.
The bathtub on the back that they used to have, yep.
No, it had a big supercar wing on it.
Oh, the big supercar wing. Oh, okay.
Massive thing, yeah. But that one was in the boot.
Looked like a Hot Wheels car.
When I got over, I flew over to Sydney to pick it up. And of course, the old story, it was never as good as you thought it was going to be. So I knocked him down a bit, brought it back, give it to my painter. Used to do the taxis and got him to tidy up and paint the roof wing. But it was not bad car for Heather. It's always Heather's car.
It was never Howard's car.
It was never my car. So the XY's gone.
Yep.
She's cruising around in that now, taking the kids to school and that sort of stuff. And we've finally got the Pioneer deal on paper. So we're into it.
Yep.
Full on. So I was thinking about where you go with this, but I mean, at that point in time we had the shop, we were selling Pioneer, so I was a Pioneer agent. But I put together, and I've still got a copy of it here, of course, about an 8-page document about, you know, who I was, what I was going to do, what shows we do, all that sort of stuff. And then how many people would see the car because of all the shows. And I had a deal with Street Machine magazine that if I built the car that I'm saying I'm going to build, they'd feature it. So then I can say to them they're going to feature it with the sponsorship on it. So the deal ended up being 50 grand over 2 years. But it was a full contract, you know, a timed contract, and I had to attend all the events and all that sort of stuff. So that's how that car came about. And that pretty much covered the majority of the materials cost. Which was a similar deal I did with the Fairlane, so that I could stay in the sport. We just had to commit a whole lot of time. And then my ability to sell shirts and hats and posters to keep me on the road. So we got the deal done. So then we need some concepts.
Yes.
So what are we going to do with it? And it's twofold. I wanted something cool, but I also had to get Pioneer to sign off on it. Because of the use of the logo and all those sorts of things. So I'd run into Rowan Day at a Melbourne show, would have been a hot rod show I would imagine in Melbourne, and he had a stand there, and I had a chat to him and he seemed like a cool bloke, and he went away and came back. So I said, look, I like the salt flat look that I'd seen on some of the American mini trucks and that sort of thing. So he took that idea, and then I also liked the Motorcraft logo was down the side of a Pro Stocker, and it had that big logo, so it was a mixture of all of those things. And that's what he came back with. And of course, Howard being Howard said, well, I liked the bit out of that and I liked the bit out of that. And that's how we ended up with what we had. And this one here was what we ended up with from that. Yeah, so that's where we got to with that.
A bit of number 1, a bit of number 8.
Yeah. And then he drew that one up. And then that's what we used to scan to do the graphics. And that'll all be in the build. series.
Yep.
And then we needed a logo. So we'd been, Rock 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yep.
So now we've gone to Race Rock.
Yep.
And what I need to say now, which I make sure I didn't forget it, was that this car was built with the sole purpose to try and win Street Machine of the Year. So I won the Summer Nats, I won most things with one car or another. But I'd been led to believe that I'd sort of been runner-up or in the top 3 in Street Machine of the Year about 3 times. So we needed to get that gong and get it out of the way. So I sat down with Louis and Rodney, both Holden guys, and said, "What if you had to vote for a Ford, what would it be?" And I think I ran it past you as well. And everyone says the same thing, a coupe.
Yeah.
So that's how we ended up with a coupe, because as you know, I'm a 4-door guy.
Yep.
So we ended up with a coupe. And then when I did my research, the people that vote for Street Machine of the Year actually are the readers of the magazine, and you used to have to cut the coupon out of the magazine and send it in.
Yes.
Right? So the readership of Street Machine magazine was age 16 to 25 or something, was the bulk of the readership. So what do young boys like?
Blowers.
Blowers, big wheels,
Big wheels.
big stereo.
Yep.
So ta-da, Pioneer Coupe. So that's how it was concepted. And then we sat down with a whole lot of hot rod and carcraft American magazines, and anything you liked to do with anything on the car, you put a post-it note on it, and we made a stack of them, and then we took all those ideas and dreamt up the Pioneer Coupe. That's how it was designed and come up with. So it was a combination of all 3 of us.
Yeah.
And then that one there with the palm trees, was the T-shirt from then. And I've got some of that artwork, obviously, to have the photo, but not enough at this point to do a shirt. So we've done one like this with the Pioneer one on as well, which will be on that website on astilldesign.com. So we're finally building.
Yes.
So I've got so many photos. To give you a bit of an idea, here's some of the photos.
Yeah, and that's just for this episode.
For this episode. So part of the issue is because a lot of it's old, they're photos, not digital, so then I've got to scan them and all that. So I've put 3 to a page or 4 to a page here because I've just got so many photos. So as you can see, there wasn't much left. So I bought a good car and cut it all up and threw it away. But the idea of buying a good car was to get good glass, good stainless, bumpers, all those things. And I paid, I think, 4 and a bit for it, and I sold 3 and a bit off it. So
that's pretty good.
I ended up with all of that for $1,000. So you sort of couldn't go wrong. So cut it down, and you can see there it's just sitting on some blocks to get an idea of height. And we pinched a wheel off Louis' car.
Yeah, Louis' Tirana's wheel on the front.
Going to run a 16 on the front, and then the rears were a 15-15 in the end, and they were a 22-inch wide Mickey Thompson, and if I remember rightly, they were 33 high.
Massive.
Massive wheel. And you can see already I've cut the quarter, so just because I couldn't physically get the tyre in the quarter. So the idea there, the reason for the ladder is holding the guard up because we've cut all the front off it. So they got our height set up, and then same as the Fairlane, I put it up on the stands from the Fairlane and welded it down so that we could start piecing it together. So once again, we've sort of got to that point now where I had the car drawn with a rear wing. So then we had to work out how we're going to do that. So that's core flute, and then you'll see further on when we start making that. So more cutting. I chose to move the wheel arch forward, so I shortened the sill panel rather than, I find quite often if you go back it makes the arse look too short. So I've moved the wheel forward, shortened the wheelbase, and then put that back in. And we'll cover this in more detail when we go in. And it was never designed to race, so it had plenty of steel in it.
Yes.
And
it was sturdy.
A lot of that was learnt from doing the Fairlane with the engineer. So I built it on the same concept. It was never going to break. And then big block forward, so we needed to work out where that was going to sit and where the rails were going to come through. And then massive tubs. I mean, ridiculous. They went all the way up and touched the underside of the parcel shelf to get it that low.
And those wheels were so tall.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
And then you'll see the squareness in the trans tunnel and all that was just all done to be different. It was sort of like, what can we do? And we ended up calling it the Star Wars tunnel or something because it looked a bit like, the Star Wars thing.
Yep.
And then the whole front, the same deal. I wanted that pro stock look. So it needed to have rails, and we needed to pick up the guards and the radiator and all that sort of stuff. And that was all done in very light tubing. And another mate of mine was building sidecars, and I borrowed his bender to bend the tube to be able to make all the rails and stuff to mount all that up. And somehow or other, I got all the panels back on it and got it to work.
Fitted, yeah.
And fitted. And then this is part of the rear end, so I've just got one of my magazines and I've gone, yeah, I like the look of that. So I've copied that, made some templates, cut it out with
the hard way back then. Yep.
No digital then, mate.
No plasma cutters.
I bought the diff out of from Taverna at the width I needed, and then made all the plates up and welded all that on and
beefed it up.
Fortunately, it ran all right. It didn't bend the housing. And then I love these photos, just a whole lot of metal. So there's all that pipe work that holds the guards on. And then the front end was a stainless one built by Mark Sanders in Adelaide at Road Performance Modifications. And it was like an aftermarket, and then we had Hattie do the front end. Mm-hmm. So it was Hadfield drop spindles, and then I'd bought the brakes and sent them to Hattie, and he matched them up to the spindles to get everything to work to be able to run what we needed to run and get it sitting right with the coil over. Yep. And then, engine mounts, all those things that have got to be done. And then a bit more cardboard design, mate.
Very handy, that cardboard.
CAD?
Yes.
Cardboard, yeah. What do I normally say? Anyhow, cardboard design.
3D printing at
That's
the early stage.
And then the dash, all the interior in this was fabbed. So we made a tube framework, and then that fascia is 3mm bonded together, the same as you make a set of skis. So just custom wood, and then glued, and then clamped in position, and then once you let it dry, take it off, it all stays in position. So that's how all those bits were made. And then the same with the door trims. They were sort of made like a boat with a rail behind. Mm-hmm. Pretty much what Simon's doing on the new one, actually. Yep. Yeah. So there's the dash there, and you can see the actual top of the dash. That was 4 pieces of 19mm glued together.
So far more fabrication in this than your average build, that you've done in the past.
In that era,
that
was like everything. We made everything pretty much. And you can see there now it's all been machined out. And all those curves and all I just did with the 9-inch sander with the 80 grit on it. Yep. Made a hell of a mess. And that was we had 10-inch subs in the dash and 6-inch splits.
Unheard of.
And then it had 4 8-inch 4-ways in the back with the amps, and then 2 12-inch subs. So sub facing and one going up off the glass, and then 3 of them big black amps. And then auto meter gauges. So there's the subs going in the dash. Louis on the job. I'm not sure about it. I always like that photo. I'm not sure why. He's like,
what are we
doing? What are we doing? And you can see the dash there now, so it's all covered. And then when the other one went on, it all matched up, and there was no stitching. And I designed it that way so that there was no loss of points for bad stitching, because there wasn't any stitching. Yeah. I thought that made some sense.
That's that marine influence, those speedboats.
That's it. Yeah. And this particular car was trimmed by the Carafano brothers. Mm-hmm. So I ran into Carmen when you were with me the other day.
Yes.
Down at Motorex. Yep. And he's still going, still trimming in Adelaide. And I just see the middle of the dash there, there's a Race Rock logo. Yep. That was the centre stage speaker for the stereo. Okay. So it actually had another speaker, or 2 speakers in behind that. Yep. And we needed to work out a grill for that. And it ended up off the car because we changed things. Yep. And that's it there. And that's a piece of aluminium, and Lou used that print there and put it on there, and then got a fret saw and cut that out by hand.
There's a lot of hours of work in
that. Put a bit of fabric on it and welded a couple of threads on it to make that centre stage, and then that now sits proudly in my room. So it's just another one of those little things that nowadays you'd throw that in a machine. Yep. Scan it, zip,
water jetted, cut it out,
blow it out, and it'd be all done. Well, that was all hand cut, and then I think by memory it had a Falcon column in it, and then the Momo, but the seating position wasn't real flash, but it looked pretty cool, which was all about the looks. And then a bit more Commodore, mate. That's Commodore fabric. When I was looking for colours, I thought that had enough blue in it to match the outside.
We're slowly turning you.
It's a worry, isn't it? And then you can see there in the console had 2 12 stackers, so that when we're at the events we could play lots of music. I've got to keep moving because we're running out of time already. We're only halfway through. So that's Carmine there and his younger brother. and then that's his older brother, and that's me and Carmine the other day down at Motor X.
Motor X,
so he was there with a really nice Camaro and a couple of other cars that he had in Superstars, or his customer cars. And then back in the day when no one heard of epoxy, so grind her up and throw the bog in, and I'm never shy to say mine have got bog in them because I file finished the bog.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot since then, but everything was filled, all the rails, and then all of the components, diagram, and then that rear wing, once again we core fluted it, and then Louis made that as well. So that I bought some flat bar, like 300mm wide by 5mm by what amount of metres, and he basically fabbed that up out of, once again we weren't worried about weight, weighed a bloody tonne, but it looked cool. And then of course we had to do the graphics. So we had the design, and I'm not going to go into depth about how we did it, but we actually put that through a computer, my sign writers, and I was still talking to me the other day on Facebook, from Jade Signs in Broken Hill, and we put the ruby cut in there, and he scanned it and he rang me up and said, this won't bloody work, it's terrible. And I went down and it was all jagged. I said, oh, I love it.
Yep.
Looks really cool.
That's what I want.
So we messed about and got all of the height, and length correct, and then we actually made 3 different masks for the 3 different blues, and then the Pioneer in addition to that. And you might recognise the bloke on the right with his finger up there, so that's Owen Webb. So Owen then worked at ICI Dulux.
Yes.
And the car was done in ICI, like Dulux Cobra series, basically. And Owen came out, so I painted the car white, and then Owen came out, and Louis and Rodney, Owen and myself, Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, and then back out of there Sunday afternoon, and he went back to work. So he was a rep back then. So got the boss in, just checking up on us, making sure we're getting it right. So Heather's there. Got my best shorts and shoes on. A lot of time in the booth.
Yes.
And then you can see there the way the booth was set up. So we went to a booth at a local panel shop. So we put the wheelbarrow wheels on the rig to get it in and out. And then the Pioneer and that whole process of being able to get it on and get it all cleared. And then that's a pile of masking. So if you imagine,
a little bit,
mask the whole car 4 times and then mask it again to clear it. Yeah, it was like a 6x4 trailer of masking after we finished. And then that's it, ready to go home. The truck's looking pretty tidy as well with all the Pioneer gear on it now. Look at them wheels.
Huge.
I love that. Looks like Louis come from work, so he's running the shop then. So that's probably, must have been the Saturday or the Sunday. Anyhow, he's got his work clobber on, might have been the Monday. So then back home on the rotisserie, starting to put trim and stuff in it, and Trevor Wilcock there. Trevor actually was the windscreen guy, but then he was a mechanic, and he did a bit of a stint at the taxis with us as well, and he raced Speedway, of course. He's a sidecar boy, so he's the guy I borrowed the gear off to make the sidecar. So it's all that one little group, So lots of detail on that car. That's always been my forte, I guess. And then we sent the wing down to Adelaide and had it coated. What's the word? Help me, Dale.
Powder coated?
No, the other one. Anodised.
Anodised.
So it was all anodised. And Louis was so frustrated. He did all the perfect countersinks and all that. And when they polished it, they opened all the holes up. And they come back anodised, nothing we could do. So sometimes you lose control. But and you can see the boot lid's not painted because I obviously was running behind, because we built this car in 9 months and went to work.
Yeah,
so,
9 months part-time.
Yeah, the boot lid had to be welded up. And it's funny, the way this car was built was that I sat down with Rodney and Lou and said, right, you want to give me a hand, we'll build this car. And I said to both of them, really trying to win Street Machine of the Year, but also want to build the best car. Even judged the best car. So we need to make a commitment to it. And the commitment we all made was that I'd do 40 hours a week, Louis would do 15 and Rodney would do 25. You had a calendar in the shed, you had to mark off your hours, and you couldn't make up. If you missed Friday night, you had to make it up Saturday. You couldn't wait and make it up next week, because you know what happens when you do that.
That's right.
You never fall behind. So we did that. Rodney probably ended up doing 35 or 40 hours. But that's how we got it built. And it was really interesting that when we got it built and we went to the first show And from a show point of view, like not summer nats, because you go there and we're driving and doing all the things. We went to the hot rod show and we got our ass kicked by a 55 Chev. And when we came home, Rodney said, "Thought you said," because I think I said to him, I said, "I don't know how we can beat this Chev," because it was pretty cool. And that was from True Colour Restorations, and it was very innovative at the time. But sometimes it's the young bloke that pulls you in the gear and says, "Hey,
you told me.
You said."
Yeah.
So we knuckled down and did a bit more work and ended up catching him. So you can see the gearbox there. So that was Power Glide, and the guy Race Glides did that gearbox. And I said to him, "Can you send me the casing and I'll clean it up, send it back to you?" And I sent it back to him, ran me up and said, "You are an idiot."
He didn't do a lot of show cars.
No,
did he,
obviously not.
No.
So we're working through assembly.
Yep.
You can see through the door there, the house is, the garden's half done. And then, long story on the engine, and I'm going to try and cover it really quickly, but pretty much everything's running behind. 9 months is a crazy build frame, but we've got to get there. And Bob Fisher built the engine, and he had an arrangement with Motec, so working with Motec to get that sort of injection to work electronically, it really hadn't been done at that point in time. And it had got down, 2 weeks to the summer nats, and then we're getting down, and yeah, be right. And then I ring up a week before and they say, "No, we can't do it." I'm going, no, that's not.
It's a week
it doesn't
before.
work.
Yeah.
I'd need to have an engine.
Yeah.
And the guy at Motec says, "Well, it's all here, but the guy that, like our chassis guy's not here, then we don't have enough Ford stuff to mount it because it's a big block." And I said, "Well, I'll come down and mount it." And he said, "What are you, a chassis guy?" I said, "Yeah, I'm a chassis guy."
Yeah.
No problem. As long as you've got a welder, I should be able to sort it out. So Rodney and I hop in the truck, drive down to Melbourne, make all the engine mounts and all for the dyno, mount the thing on the dyno, get it run, put it back in the truck and head home. This is like 3 days before summer nats.
Yep.
But we got there.
Nothing
Didn't
like
run
it.
very well, but we got there. Once ran good on the dyno. Once it got in the car, things went wrong. So there it is there. And I reckon I got all these photos and trying to work out which ones are from which events, but I think I've got them pretty close. So the first year, it was sneezing through the manifold and had a whole lot of issues.
It was running, but only just.
Yeah. And when it was sitting in the hall, in the judging, I'm standing around, you stand around the car, hanging out, and 2 guys walked up, and one says to the other, "Well, this won't run." So I picked up, and I thought, someone might know what they're talking about. So I'm listening in, and I went over and said, "How you going? I own the car. You said it won't run." He goes, "Oh, sorry, man." I said, No. Tell me.
Yeah.
How are we going to fix it? So it ended up being marked from Injection Perfection, and I ended up flying him out to Broken Hill to get him to tune it, and you'll see some photos here in a minute of that. But sometimes it's, when you're playing with new things, you got to listen and take on board and try and sort it out. So that 4-shot there is Street Machine doing the feature, and the really cool photos of that, they lit off a flare behind the car to get the orange and all behind it, and a lot of the photos and posters I've got are of those photos. But what they didn't realise, they chucked it on the floor and all the orange went over the side of the car. So then there's this massive panic. We're running around trying to get polishes and all, because it actually eaten into the clear.
Yeah, it's pretty savage
stuff. So we got out of that, didn't create too many dramas. So we went there. I was really happy with the fact that we even made it. Car was very green, wasn't running real well. Can't remember what we won, but it was doing what it needed to do. And then when I read that article, that was obviously in the local paper again, but we had that on display at the shop. And that's what that was all about. And then we scored a feature with Street Machine at the event and scored a cover. So we got our second cover, and there's that flare in the background. So that was one of those iconic photos. And after that, the sort of things we did is we made a cover for the radiator, obviously got the bonnet finished. There was a whole lot of things that weren't done for the car for that first year, but it was still enough for it to compete and run around and play the game. And then once again, tied up with someone like Pioneer, we had brochures and flyers and things that hadn't been done before. So that was all sort of new and different, and a way of promoting our sponsor, but also the car. And we then had a whole lot of shows to do. So I'd committed to, I think, 6 or 8 shows a year for 2 years. And the first one there would have been down at Melbourne at the Hot Rod Show, which is always in the exhibition building, which is a beautiful historic building, and the timber floors, and they roll all the cars in there. And we were set up, I'd worked out an arrangement with Pioneer whereby Pioneer would have a stand for the local Pioneer agent, and the coupe would be nearby. And we did that first show, and it was a bit of a, no one knew what everyone else was doing, so I ended up putting a deal back to Pioneer, and then I ended up arranging every show. So I'd actually liaise with the local Pioneer shop, and then I'd organise all of the stand and get a modelling agent for the girls and all those sorts of things. So we really put on a show everywhere we went. That one we're now up in Queensland, so up at Brisbane Hot Rod Show, and always managed to get a crowd, and a girl there in the t-shirt and one of the boys from the shop up there.
All over the country. It wasn't...
Everywhere. Yeah. We went everywhere with it. Yep. And back then it was always felt that if you want to win Street Machine of the Year, people have got to see the car. Now that's been proven wrong since, but that was always the thinking. All the cars that won Street Machine of the Year seemed to be the ones that did the circuit. So part of that
aim... There wasn't a lot of internet back then.
So there's Rodney enjoying himself. And then the family's grown now, so Rodney's become the number 2 son.
Yep.
And still is, even though he's 50 or something now. So Heather doesn't seem to appear. She always says she's not in many photos because she's taken them all.
Yeah.
Not sure about that, but that's the story.
It's a good excuse.
So the kids are growing up. No rabbit ears from Lee. Lee's normally doing the...
No, he's
behaving himself.
Behaving himself with his sister for a change.
So the old trailer's wearing a bit thin.
Yep.
So guess who that is?
That wouldn't be Mr. Hooper,
That'd be Mr. Hooper again. So Hoops is still working for himself.
He specialises in trailers.
So I built the frame and all, and then, hey Hoops, come and give us a hand to pop rivet this thing off, because there's about 1 million rivets in it. So this was a new design that I'd seen somewhere or dreamt up, so I got sick of pulling ramps out. So the ramp is the back door on a tilt with a hydraulic ram, and that worked pretty darn well with the big Pioneer on it. So that was us on the road. And that's why you have a trailer, enclosed trailer, Dale.
Yes, bit of dirt.
That was when the floods were on, and we were trying to get to Queensland it might have been the second year, I think. But yeah, made life difficult. So now that's Adelaide, and I know that because that's Mr. Carafano's Stato. And we're on the other side of that Pioneer wall. So I just, after running in the other day and I seen that photo, I thought I'll use that. And then this is during setup, so you can see the mirror box there, and we're getting organised. And a mate of mine used to race go-karts, and he was getting out of it, and they were cheap. So I bought a couple of go-karts off him, thinking I might see whether Lee can steer or not. He's only a young fella, so I think I've got a couple of photos of that in a minute. So that's Adelaide, and we obviously didn't do too bad there. He's got a few trophies. Oh, I should have dragged it out. That race rock thing, I've got that.
You don't throw much away, do you?
No, I don't.
It's
nice to have a bit of stuff.
That's why the sheds are so big.
That's it, mate. So there's the little cart. So they were black when we got them, and then I obviously give them a coat of blue and
Pioneer
put some
blue
stickers.
now. Yep.
Rock Solid Automotive, and there he is there. And I must admit, it's one of those. There's a few things in life you often wonder whether you did the right thing, but I was so darn busy, I never really give him any time. And I think we only ever took it out, 3 or 4 times. And he could steer. I mean, he went pretty well. And another friend of mine did the same with his lad, and that lad now is racing on the TV. But he gave up his life.
Yeah.
And I was still living my life, so poor old Lee missed out. But he was pretty quick. But they sat in the shed, and we moved on and did other things. He very good soccer player and roller hockey and all sorts of things, but no go-karts. He's not a bad golfer.
Not a bad golfer.
So I threw that in. So it's the right time because I've got my T-shirt on, got my Race Rock shirt on, and that's over at Mum's. So there's no Christmas hat style, so I don't know what time of the year it is. Might be my birthday, I got a card.
Yeah.
Look who's on the telly.
Is it Benny Hill?
No. You see who it is?
No, I can't.
That's Ray Martin.
Oh, it's Ray Martin. Oh.
He's got the same haircut as me, look.
Oh, there you go. The Ray Martin hair.
The Ray Martin hair. Anyhow, moving on. So, a few more features. The car obviously stood out, and people love to get a piece of it. So I talked about tuning it.
Yep.
So I got on to Mark and I said, what do you need? And he said, right, I want you to send me the Dizzy. You need another fuel pump. I don't think it's getting enough fuel. And what else? Oh, I'm going to new set of leads because he didn't like the leads I had. So I sent the Dizzy over. He played around with that, and then I flew him out. And he came out with his laptop. We put the Dizzy in it, got it running, and then I'd organise with the local mine. The road we're on there was a private road inside the mine site, and we ran up and down. It's about 3 k's long, and he ran up and down there and tuned it. And then over the right here, I don't know whether it's just cleaning or getting ready for that, but the guy in the reddy colour shirt there, that's Bruce Church. And if you go back to episode 1 or 2, two, Bruce Church built the GT stock car. That's him.
The one that your brother bought off you.
That's the one. So it's just all links together, mate, when you live in a small town. So Churchy used to come around and see what we're up to. And then, from a work point of view, I always talk about Broken Hill's got this, you know,
boom or bust.
Or bust. Boom, bust. And it never really related to the economy of the country. It was always related to the zinc price or what was happening, you know, worldwide with... Because we were still lead zinc. And primarily zinc in the end, but the prices of all those metals would determine how many workers they'd have on the mine, all those sort of things, and their profitability. And in '96, there was one company, Pasminco, owned the 2 major mines, and unbeknownst to anybody, they closed one. And they handed out redundancies to something like 600 men at both mines, and they took some from this one and took over here, so it was like a massive hit to the town. And I raise that now because we've just opened a new shop, and I think we've been open, you know, 2, maybe 3 years, 2.5 years, and it was devastating, basically on us. So, you know, we're selling all the things you don't need. Discretionary
income is gone.
That's the one. So the shop was struggling, so I made the decision to close it up, which sort of hurt a bit because I had my mate working there, and it was all part and parcel of what we're doing with the cars. And it was a really hard thing to do, but it had to be done. So we closed it up, and at the same time, Heather and I are talking about the taxis and making that probably our core business. And as we wind the family company down, that we'd actually buy the taxi company from the family, and we'd make that our business. So I'm trying to buy out, there was 2 companies, I'm trying to buy the other company out.
The opposition.
That's it.
Yep.
And in the end, he bought us out. So the opportunity that was there was gone, and in the blink of an eye, the shop's gone, the taxis are gone, and I'm pretty much running the family business still. It's just the motel, the one motel. So I just said to Dad, look, you know, I'll work something out, we'll see where we're going. And we needed to sell that last motel. And an opportunity come along with all these committees I'm on and all that sort of stuff is that there was some money raised when the mine was closed to try and generate growth in small business. And that Enterprise Development Centre was created, and they were looking for someone to run it. So I applied for the position, was fortunate enough to score the job. And what you're looking at there now in that photo is the old railway goods shed that had been closed about 10 years. So nothing to do with me, but someone had organised that through, you know, the channels of state government to peppercorn rent the building so that we had somewhere to live. With the aim to actually turn that whole big area into a business incubator where people can come in and set up a small business in there. Might be small manufacturing. Anything, a builder just to store his gear and work from. And then what we did was we supplied the secretarial base and a managerial base, and I was trained as a business facilitator, whereby marketing, planning, budgeting, all that sort of stuff. And young Ange there, we employed her as well, so it was myself and Angela. And you'll see in the next one where we actually grow that into quite a large business and did a lot for the community. So that all of a sudden became the job, and then the motel was just under my guidance, but it had always had a manager in it anyhow. So all of a sudden there's a new thing to do, and you can see there just a few photos from the paper and some of the things we were up to. But there was a whole lot of programs we got into, and of course the value of new job, new car, mate.
Yes. Yep. You're still wearing the suit, so you need to have
a car to go with it.
Car to go with it.
So we'll cover that, and you can see the age of the palms, and we've still got the XC Ute on there. Dad's Ute's still kicking around. That was Dad got that one brand new in '77, so it's still going. And then we got the Gong. So
Street Machine of the Year.
Street Machine of the Year. Had to share it.
Yep.
Which was
happy to share.
A win's a win.
Yeah.
And
better than coming second.
Only saying to Louise today when I was going through these photos, still remember where I was when they rang. So I was at the cricket nets at the high school with Lee for cricket practice, and I got the call. You know, we've only got 6 weeks to go, and we're down to the last final, 2 or 3. Will you be available to get the car down here to do a photo shoot? I said, so you're telling me I won or not? And they go, well, there's 2 of you that are real close, we don't know yet. But we want to know if you do, can you come down? So then I had to sit and wait for 6 weeks to find out whether we did. And then it turned out that it was a draw.
One of these ones,
that's the one.
Yeah, it is.
That's it. So we went down and did that. And of course, Macbeth was the other car. And that iconic shot there is still, to this day, pops up on Facebook on a regular basis. And we staged that up pretty well. I mean, we'd done the photo shoot. Both cars were trailered to the photo shoot. And then they set about trying to do a drive shot or whatever, and someone dreamed this up. So we actually unloaded around the corner. Someone said, oh, it's a tram coming. We both pulled out, and there was a pedestrian crossing that you can't see in the photo there. And then they had a couple of guys walking backwards and forwards. So that we had to sit there and wait for these idiots that never got off the pedestrian crossing, and they're all taking the photos. So that's how it became that sort of really cool photo.
Yeah, because I mean, like I remember, we knew Rock 3 was massive but this thing was out of this world.
Next level, really.
In terms of coverage.
And you sort of forget. I look at some of the photos now and just go, well, it really was an in-your-face car. So then we're still doing shows. So this one here was, I think that was in Melbourne actually. That was a car audio expo.
Yep.
Because car audio in the mid-90s was massive. And we were down there with Pioneer doing the thing. And then this one was I'm sure it was Dubbo, at the Bumper to Bumper store there. And they'd approached through Pioneer back to me, and I said, I give them a number that it would take me to fuel and accommodation to get there, and went there, and Chick Henry was there doing the Summer Nats thing. It was their 5th birthday, so me and Chick were sort of running amok a bit.
I heard a little story about you and Chick running amok there.
So that's pretty much getting through that first year, and then of course we need to do a bonnet because we're going back to Summer Nats.
Because it wasn't quite finished the first time.
It wasn't quite finished. And I reckon that was a new old stock bonnet, which I probably shouldn't be telling people that, but anyhow. And at that time, I was buying new old stock parts for that car off Rare Spares, because that was when they were in that era of they used to hunt all the old closing dealers for parts, and that's a lot of what they used to sell. And I know I bought a guard and a bumper. The grill was a new old stock grill, and it was all quite cost effective to get.
Because they weren't that old, were they? Like, relatively speaking.
No, well, what are we in 90? It was a 73 model. Yeah, not ridiculously old.
Yep.
So prepping up, doing the bonnet, and then new man in the crew. So the guy on the left there is Lee Domain.
Yep.
And of course Rodney on the right, and I'm the big guy in the middle. Yeah, it's pretty big.
Yeah, that was a big shirt.
It's a big shirt, white shirt. Don't wear white shirts. So that would have been getting ready to go to Summer Nats 2. And then we went over there and we did pretty well. Car's running better now, doing the events. You can see there there's nothing on the hat, air filter wise. And we'd sort of gone up and stirred up a fair bit of dust, as you can see in those photos. So I ended up getting a finer filter made for it then to be able to do those silly games. And I used to enjoy driving it hard at those events, and was sort of known for that I wasn't going to go out and pussyfoot around. We were there to try and win things.
Yep.
And the downside of that is when you get home, you've got to clean it. So that just gives you a little bit of an idea of how far So that would have been after that summer nats to pull everything down, clean everything up, repolish everything. And that's a classic photo with the size variance in the wheels. And that's not a small front wheel, that's like a 215 or a 225,
yeah,
16.
16, yeah.
Yeah, just the backs were so big. And then, of course, as we're doing those rounds, people are promoting the shows and doing deals at shows. And like the one in the middle was the actual Pioneer brochure where, used and recommended by Ferrari, Howard Astill and Lotus. That was pretty cool.
There were some big hitters there, H.
Yeah. And then the Choice of Champions, mate.
Yep.
And they were in all the brochures in all the stores Australia-wide, which was a pretty cool thing. So we got all this going on, and then the Holden eventually went.
Yes, I don't think you'd keep it forever, would you?
And I said to Heather, this new Magna looks pretty cool. And she's going, I'm not driving a Magna.
Oh, you don't like the word Magna.
And I went, but have a look how nice, they're like a BM, they're a cool looking thing. And they were cheap.
Yeah.
And they were reliable. But I ordered it through the local dealer, got it delivered to Adelaide Special Vehicles. And, springs, wheels, kit, and under Heather's orders we had to remove every sign of Magna off the car, including some of the mouldings had it actually pressed in, so they had to be ground up and bogged and painted, and it looked cool. Got a lot of comments, and we had that car a long time and never ever had an ounce of trouble with it. But that was the run the kids around and had to run around in. And then we're still doing shows. So this show was Chick ran a street machine, muscle car, bike show. Can't remember the exact terminology of it now, at the Sydney Showgrounds. And he said, I think I can get your other cars. So he'd organised with the owners of the other two cars that we had all three on display at the one time, which was
that's pretty cool.
A really good thing to do. Yeah, it was obviously enjoyable, and Chick had gone all that trouble. We went to Perth, Brisbane. I threw that photo in because it gives you an idea sometimes of travel. When we had a lot of floods, that was out near Nyngan somewhere where everything was just totally underwater. We came over here to Wollongong, so that was Unanderra. Boys from Oak Flax Electronics, and we're almost at the end of that stage now where we're going back to the third summer nats. And the new boy on the block, young Lee, who we call the kid, because my boy's Lee obviously as well, so everyone called him the kid, not only us. He was involved in a group of motorbike guys, the postie guys now, the postie bikes?
Yep.
Well, these guys with the ski to Grimshaw, which I don't quite know where that comes from, and it was 100cc max, and they all had their bikes, and their annual event was like a bush trip, and you had to wear a suit. So I'm going to throw a little bit of video in there, but the kid wanted to build a bike, but he wanted to do a flash one, and a bit like a Harley.
Yep.
So he had 100 Kawasaki, we chopped and laid down the forks. I think they were like an off-road or a motocross set of front forks, Harley rear guard on it, a Bantam tank, and just made the seat, and was a little cool thing, and he sort of loved that. And then we decided that we'd take it to Summer Nats as well. But the bugbear with the Summer Nats was to try and win Grand Champion. I really needed to up my game in the driving events a bit. And the problem with a car like this is you don't get to drive it very often.
No, it's not exactly
roadworthy. So
or legal of sorts.
The kid's dad was heavily involved in the cadets and the army barracks, and the army barracks was across the road from Heather's mum and dad's house, and that's where they built all the Mad Max cars. So the film crew hired that compound for those 3 months, and they built all those cars we know from Mad Max in that area. And it had this massive courtyard where they used to do the marching and all. So we went over there and marked out the go-woe and practiced the go-woe for a few hours. And part of the issue was the go-woe was to sit in the car and look out and know where the line is when you stop.
Yes.
So we did the practice, and that year we ran an 8-second go-woe, and we were in the top 10 in the go-woe, and those points all accumulate, obviously, to help you do that. So that's it unloading down the bottom one, and you can see the army trucks in behind it. And then the top one was a bit of a photo op when we were setting up. I think that might have been when I was looking to sell it when I decided to get out of it. So we're back at the Summer Nats. Pioneer's really up the ante, and they were sponsoring quite a lot of cars, you know, race cars and all sorts, so they had some of them there. And you can see by the sword, we had a pretty good event.
You had a rather good outcome on that,
Went pretty well.
Yeah.
And the Hooter, so the little scooter was called a Hooter because it wasn't a Harley and it wasn't a scooter.
Yeah.
So you can see Louis on it there, and then that's the kid at the front there, and Ange Henry and the guy from Pioneer and one of Ange's mates, and me trying to sit on the back guard of the taillight. And I rode that bike around Summer Nats a couple of laps with that sword, and I couldn't work out the next day why I couldn't lift my arm. Because that sword's pretty heavy.
It's a big, heavy sword. Yeah.
So we're there, we've sort of done really well. There's a little bit of footage I've got here, a bit of video I found of the coupe out on the oval with Mark Sanders' Monaro and Bam Bam's Monaro in between that.
Yep.
So I just thought I'd throw that in. So that was sort of getting to the end of that whole deal. And then the last one here was the kid on that scooter.
On the parade around the oval.
Yeah, and I mean, they really loved that whole thing back then. There was a whole lot of people doing cars and stuff. I still do, I guess. So, yeah, I had that bit of footage there. And there I am with my sword. And I got in a bit of trouble with that one because what's she doing sitting on the car? who do you reckon would have said that?
I wonder, Mrs. Astill.
Mrs. Astill, yeah. So that was it. And then out on the oval. And I think Lee was sitting in the car that day. So that's it. So that gets us to the point where that car's done. Got the house built.
You felt like you were done
got
after
a new
that,
job,
didn't you?
Got through a few more cars, a few more drivers. And I pretty much announced at that show that I was retiring from the show part of it. I mean, we've been going from, 77 through to 98, 98, under the pump, working day and night, and you really neglect your family and a whole lot of other things to do it. And I pretty much said that's it. And that shot I show were at the stage, I put everything in Unique Cars for sale, and I sold the truck, sold the trailer, didn't sell the car, it sat. And it just sat in the shed, and we got on with our lives. And in the next episode, we'll tell you what happened about our lives and where the car went and all the rest of it. So I hope you enjoyed that. We're just snuck in under the hour because we've got our timer running.
We've done well.
Now I'm nearly out of. I'm getting a bit chapped.
Lot of photos.
A lot of photos, and I'm really enjoying bringing the process. Really want to thank Lovell's Suspension and Springs for their support now, and that's going to enable us to keep going because it's a bit of a chore for all of us. Dale and I are normally here doing this at night, late, trying to get it squeezed in. Subscribe, like, comment, all those things, because that helps us to move forward. And we're looking forward to bringing you number 8 in another couple of weeks.
We'll see you then.
Thanks a lot.